Hi, I'm Leah DeChico-Ramu. Welcome. This is Teacher Talk.
Welcome everyone, and thank you for tuning in and joining in for this episode, the second episode of How to Talk to Teachers, Teacher Talk. We're in week 2 now of back to school. How's it going? We know that sometimes our kids don't like their teachers, and sometimes they haven't been assigned classrooms with their besties, and they're sad, and they're lonely, and they don't want to go to school, and they're unhappy. So I wanted to talk a bit about a really important topic about how you can support your child and how you can work with your teachers if they're struggling, unhappy, or lonely. So following on what does a teacher do, which was last week's episode, let's look at the kind of classroom environment teachers can create to ensure that every child's socio-emotional needs are being met. That's the key word we're going to be focused on today. Socio-emotional learning needs, okay? So all students can be excited about learning if they have that intact. So I've asked one of the kindest teachers I know to help us out today. Mr. Joe Archer is a prep teacher covering kindergarten to grade 3 in the Grand Erie District School Board. Now that means he supports multiple classrooms. He's had his own classrooms, but he's responsible for helping other teachers have the resources and the supports they need to have exceptional classrooms like the ones he's had. So welcome, Joe. But I want to tell you a little bit more about him because when I asked him for his bio, he said, I don't have much to say, but that's not true. I think he's exceptional, as are all the teachers I'm going to be talking to and so many of the teachers that you work with every day. So when I first met Joe, he was a digital lead learner for his board, and he played a key role in developing homegrown tech talent at the school where he was at. He wasn't the prep teacher at the time, through the Ed Tech student crew, where students who demonstrated an aptitude and interest in technology were trained to support teachers in using educational technology tools in the classroom to support learning. That flipped idea and that reciprocity I talk about in the book, where teachers learn from students, and that's magnificent, was actually practiced and concretized in this initiative by Mr. Archer and a colleague of his. So Joe, welcome. Thank you for joining me. I know that I want to add that you're a volunteer firefighter for 11 years, and you're an amazing dad to Xander, Abby, and Callie. I think those are important things to share because, again, it speaks to who you are and the wonderful, kind person that you are. So before we go into the questions I'm going to be asking you, I think we have to frame this up a little bit and let people know what this social-emotional learning actually is and how it translates into the classroom. So I'm just going to read a definition that comes from the big guys, or the people that have worked really hard on developing these competencies or these skills, so to speak. And the group is called CASL, and it's the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, not-for-profit organization that pioneers the field of social-emotional learning. It was established in 1994, and its mission is to advance social-emotional learning, or SEL, as we often call it, as a fundamental part of education from preschool to high school. Now, our friend, Canadian Giancarlo Brado of PayVadu, who is a national education leader and has worked globally, actually did some work with CASL. So shout out to Giancarlo. And it's wonderful to have Candela represented in these think tanks around the world that are really helping to shape education that then trickle down into our classrooms and benefit our kids. Okay, so what is this SEL, social-emotional business? Let's look at a lovely image that will help us walk through it. It's an educational framework that focuses on the development of emotional intelligence, social skills, and self-awareness in children and adults. So really important that this is something we can all learn and practice. It involves teaching individuals how to manage their emotions, set positive goals, show empathy for others, establish healthy relationships, and make responsible decisions. Now, this is a time in our history that's really tough. And I think that these are all skills that we can practice to make the world a better place. And where better to start with our tiny ones in school, so that when they get into the real world, they're practicing these things seamlessly, and it's the norm. So it's considered essential for both personal well-being and academic success, as it equips individuals with tools they need to navigate complex social situations and cope with challenges effectively. So as I mentioned, there are 5 core competencies, which is another fancy word for skills: The first one is self-awareness, to understand our emotions, our values, and strengths. So understanding self, again, back to Joanne McKecken, connecting with self, connecting with other, connected to humanity. So Maslow, hierarchy of needs, feeling safe, having that self-awareness. Self-management, so regulating our emotions, thoughts, and behaviors in different situations, which is really tough these days. So that's something we have to learn and practice. Social awareness, showing empathy and understanding towards others from diverse backgrounds and cultures. The world is a big place and we can learn from each other. And diversity and inclusion is something that we practice every single day in our classrooms. Relationship skills, building and maintaining healthy and rewarding relationships. So that's other. And then responsible decision making, making ethical, constructive choices about personal and social behavior. That's big. That's a lot of stuff, right, Joe?
It's huge. A lot there.
Let's start from the beginning, my friend. Let me hear your voice. Say hello to everybody here today.
Hello, everyone. Excited to be here. This is kind of fun.
I'm great. I'm so happy to hear you say that, because I know you're taking time out of your day to speak with me today and to speak with our viewers. So thank you for that. So okay, start from the beginning. I talk about classroom environment in the first chapter of How to Talk to Teachers, how important it is to set this up for kids. And each kid is different. Each student is different. Each student has different needs. So tell me, what's the vibe in the classrooms that you've had, and also the classrooms that you support? What are you going for, and how does that support SEL? If I walked in, what would I see? But more importantly, what would I feel? How would I feel in these classrooms?
Right. So as Leah mentioned, I've taught kindergarten to grade 6. So I've kind of had a huge range of ages and whatnot. And now I'm in a prep role, which makes it even more fun. So it's not my classroom. It's like reinventing the classroom each time you walk in. So it's different. It's lots of fun. But these rooms they're busy. There's like a not a loud hum, but there's a chatter of collaboration and stuff that's happening. Whether it's, what did you do last night, or did you hang out with grandpa? What are you reading? How did the hockey game go, or whatnot? These classrooms are safe. They're inclusive. I like the natural light thing. So most of the time as a prep teacher now, I walk in, I turn off the lights, I open the blinds. I just find it a little more warm and kind of nurturing, I guess. Often the first 5 minutes when I walk into a classroom now is, how did hockey go last night? Or, when's your dance competition? Are you doing a fun dance that we can and do in my role? Because I teach drama, dance, music, social studies, a little bit of science and whatnot. So if I can pull something of that the kids are learning and that they're really good at, and give them the stage myself, so they can showcase their skills and talents on a different stage within the classroom to their friends, it kind of opens an opportunity for them to share their passions and their loves. And again, conversations for the following day, right? Or, oh, look, I have similarities with Jenny or Susie, taste in music, or the type of dance, tap, ballet, whatever it may be. But it's, I think the key is making sure that the lines of communication are open. As Leah mentioned, socio-emotional learning is huge social pieces. Because one, if you have the lines of communication open, people feel free to share their thoughts, their feelings, which hopefully people are comfortable, right? And if you're comfortable, that emotional struggles sometimes, or some of the emotional highs and lows, aren't hidden. Kids feel comfortable sharing, their big moments, but also the sad ones too. Maybe dad leaving for work for a few weeks. I had that one this morning, and the poor little guy was in tears for about 30 minutes of the 45-minute class. So he was just sad, but it's nice because tomorrow I know going in, he just might need a little extra attention.
Joe, you hit on some really important topics there, and they lead beautifully into the next couple of questions. So the first one, I talked about the vibe, and when you walk into a classroom, and that feeling of safety is so important, not only for children, but for all of us, to feel safe. Again, That's Maslow. It's the first thing that we need. How can you learn or do anything if you don't feel safe? And giving the kids the space to feel their emotions. in that safe space is sort of a tenet of social emotional learning, and making sure that those emotions can be expressed. And then, of course, we talk about regulation, regulating, modulating them. And then I go a step further and say transmute them into something more positive, and then get that higher learning. So really, really glad to hear you touch upon some of those things. And I love the fact that you talk about getting to know who the kids are, allowing them to express their emotions, but who they are. So you'll ask them like, hey, if it's hockey or gymnastics, or maybe how did the book you're reading go? Like, not all kids have the same experiences, but really trying to understand who they are. And as a teacher, finding those nuggets to understand what brings them joy, because that's what's going to help them along their path. You talked about passion. How do we find their passions and then again transmute them into something that can be a career where they are contributing? So these are key things that you've highlighted in just that little section of content that you've just provided for us. And they're really important. So thank you for raising those, because I said, my next question was, how do you ensure that every child feels welcome, safe, and included? I think you've answered it, right?
I mean, a little bit.
For you to reiterate, please add if you'd like.
So I really try to focus, especially the first couple of weeks of school. I want your kids, and not just me. I would say every single teacher out there want your kids to feel comfortable and safe with us. We're going to be a very familiar and regular face for the next coming year, and it's important for us that they feel comfortable. I'm almost like tearing up. I don't know why, but it's that one-on-one, the conversations, the visits that you sit down, even outside of the classroom time, at recess, you're going for a walk with the kids. You're helping them, read some sentences or finish up a worksheet, or, complete a task or something. I always love throwing in jokes and a little bit of teasing about, favorite hockey teams or whatnot. My wife and kids always get me dad jokes calendar every year at Christmas. So sometimes I go in with my corny dad jokes, and often you get a giggle, and sometimes, you get well, I got one better than that. And so it just, you're kind of putting the kids on a level playing field with you at times, but also have your boundaries. You need to be a friend. You need to be a parent at times, grandparent now with the gray hair and whatnot. But, understanding families. We have so many diverse families now. I work in a rural school in Hagersville, and the amount of beautiful colors and backgrounds and cultures that we have in every classroom is quite amazing. And we can learn a lot from each other, especially different values and the religious pieces a little bit, and really understand people a little bit better, their interests, hobbies, dislikes, things their families are very stringent on, and why are always nice to hear too. Then you understand the person a little bit better.
But what you're talking about, Joe, is really important. And you're talking about connection, and you're opening up yourself to connection. So you don't have this top-down, I am the master relationship with the kids, which is really, really important. And I want to thank you for being vulnerable. So, I'm tearing up here. And I think this is one of the reasons I knew that you were the special person to talk to today, because you are able to show that vulnerability with the kids. And that's very, very powerful when you're teaching them the tenets of social emotional learning or social emotional competencies. So thank you for sharing that part of yourself with us, and sharing your humanity and connecting with these kids, because that's what I think is key. Again, humanity is about connecting with one another. And if you can show these kids and model these kids how to do that in appropriate, safe, respectful, compassionate ways, we're on to something. So I want to get back to that little boy who came in yesterday, because my next question is, how do you help the child who struggles? How do you help the kid who doesn't like you, who doesn't like the classroom, who doesn't want to be there? And I think, you've really nailed it with connecting with them, the dad jokes, and you keep coming back to hockey. We're certainly in Canada. For international viewers, hockey is a big sport here. What are you going to do tomorrow with that little boy that you just told us about?
I don't know. It's something to think about. Those are the post-it notes by the bed, or the late nights that you can't get some sleep. Where teachers love to turn their brains off, but we rarely do. We carry your kids, parents. We carry your kids, and some of the struggles that they have, and try to make the next day better. So, as of right now, I don't know that I have a complete plan of attack or answer. But, I think the key is having that conversation, the relationship already kind of preempted in there so that they feel safe to come to you. And being aware, maybe it's their body language and maybe not hearing the crying, but, they're just at the back of the carpet as opposed to the front of the carpet and not engaged, and just understanding it, right? This little guy responded really well to me sitting down in the corner. We grabbed a cushion, which his bum could fit on, and I needed two because I'm a little bit bigger now. So, made him laugh that, I needed two cushions as opposed to one like him. He kind of got a chuckle out of that, but, put an arm around him, give him a hug, get eye to eye, let him know it's a safe place. And I actually pulled out my phone and I started showing him pictures of my kids, which kind of, he seemed to appreciate that, because he's like, oh, well, how come you got two girls, but they look the same? Yeah, they're called twins. Oh my gosh, that's weird. Right. And, I had some pictures of my kids on fire trucks, and that started getting a mass, why are they on fire trucks? Well, this is what I do after hours. And, by, 5 minutes later, there was no more tears. He actually got up. He goes, all right, see you later. And was off playing with Play-Doh afterwards. And, it seemed to help. So tomorrow it could be a different story, but I guess it's, again, knowing his interests, maybe some stuff that his dad and him did, and, find a book. I'm in the library now, so I can find some interest and pull a book in and sit in the corner again with him, something like that.
It's amazing. It's good to hear. They're very resilient. So in that moment, he said, okay, see, I'm going for the Play-Doh. But I think you answered your own question, maybe unknowingly, and you said, I don't know what my plan of attack is. And I think the answer there is, I'm going to be present.
Yeah.
I'm going to be present. I'm going to see what that moment with this little guy brings. And maybe he's going to be fine, and maybe he's not. And in that moment, I have my experience, my compassion, my kindness, my skills as a teacher to bring from my toolbox. I always say teachers have a toolbox to bring to that moment with this child needs. And that is connection. I keep coming back to connection, because I think, what underpins social-emotional competencies is our connection and our humanity. So it's funny that you think you're not, I don't know, but you do. I think you just have to, you need somebody like a busybody like me to call it. I was like, hang on a second, you said something really interesting right there. And I think you're doing a wonderful job of serving this young boy, this little boy. I think boundaries are really important too. With teachers, we have to be really, really careful about what's appropriate and what's appropriate. You highlighted the diversity of the cultures in your school and what's appropriate in different cultures, and respecting that. First of all, understanding that and respecting that. So having those boundaries, you talked about the bum joke, which we thought, it was cute, but maybe for another culture that would have been a no-no. So you got to watch that, right?
Yeah.
You got to watch that.
Absolutely.
But I know even hugging, I worked in a school with a lot of kids from a culture where you don't touch, right? So how do you, and I'm a huggy type of person, I'm Italian, geez, we kiss before we say hello. So how do we, again, be hyper aware of the diversity in our classrooms and be respectful of what is appropriate and is not appropriate in cultures is really important, and always being present. So being present with those moments, really zoning in with kindness and compassion and respect to what is going on in that moment for a child, right? So especially with some of our neurodiverse kids, our kids with needs who have challenges with regulating, right? And we have a kid who's having a meltdown and you have a class to teach. That's really stressful. So I've had some strategies. I spent some time in a multiple exceptionalities class, and for you guys out there, multiple exceptionalities are kids who have various needs and delays. I mean, I'm going to do a whole section episode on kids with needs. I have a very different perspective, but a lot of kids are now being put in the classroom together, right? Which I think if we get it right is wonderful. But let's say you have a kid who's having a meltdown.
Mm-hmm.
One of the tenets of social emotional learning is self-regulation, and you've got a class. How would you deal with that, Mr. Archer? What do? You got a class and you've got a child who's having a tough time.
You're kind of cutting out a little bit. Sorry,
Yeah.
did you have a question there?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I said, what do you do if you have a child that's having a tough time? So we talked about social emotional learning and the ability to self-regulate, and a child cannot regulate. A child, whether it's a child that's neurotypical or atypical, doesn't matter. Child's having a tough time, but you have a whole other class that needs to be taught. That's a tough place to be as a teacher. How do you deal with that? How do you attend to the needs of, because we want to make sure that every child feels safe and every child has needs, but sometimes you got 35 of them,
Mm-hmm.
right? How do you, what is your approach to that situation to make sure that child feels safe and cared for, seen and heard, but the rest of your class is also safe and on task or doing what they're supposed to be doing, or it becomes a zoo? What do we do? I mean, like I said, I have some ideas because of what I did, having spent time in a multiple exceptionalities class. What would you do?
Yeah, that's a big question, and I know a lot of teachers probably struggle with this, and especially with integration now, and they're slowly removing the specialized classrooms. So yeah, it's a big question. So again, it's understanding that social emotional learning, right? Having that connection with the kids. Sometimes it's a space in the classroom. Maybe the back corner, maybe it's a front corner. Some kids like to be having some attention on them. Some really don't. Also at the time, depending on behaviors or what's occurring, sometimes the attention isn't right and it needs to be removal of some of the attention in order to help self-regulate at times. So having a space in the classroom is always helpful. And again, as a prep teacher, that's a conversation I need to have as that teacher with the classroom teacher. I'm noticing and I'm seeing when I come in these things. Is there a space or is there a place I can utilize for so-and-so in order to take a couple minutes to self-regulate? Some kids, like I mentioned, mixed exceptionalities and different types of learners. Sometimes it's a weighted blanket. Sometimes it's a reduction of light. Sometimes it's noise dampening headphones, just a quiet space. We have one in our school that loves music. And his taste in music is slightly different than what mine would be, but it's his comfort level. And as long as no one can hear it, and he's able to self-regulate using that time wisely and not become a distraction for others, he's able to calm himself and return fairly independent. Even second week in school, it's pretty decent. There's sometimes it might be a visual countdown clock or a sand timer that just it's a nonverbal. Okay, time's up. Let's see if we can come back. I have a few kids in the past that it would be like a key word for them. So pickles would be Leah, pickles. Might be that's me. I need to go back to my corner without me saying, hey, you're getting to be a little bit troublesome here and destructive. And pickles, what's everyone else is going pickles, and they see so and so go to the back corner, they're like, yeah, it's so and so's time. And enough said, right? often the other kids are going, now I know what pickles means. And for the other kids in the classroom, seeing that and seeing the individual be able to self-regulate, coming back to social emotional awareness, because the self-management is a big one, right? So for the other kids that are not having an issue at the time, to be able to see so-and-so able to regulate, it allows them to feel a little more comfortable in a space which they may have been a little bit nervous, which is not super conclusive to learning a really comfortable learning environment. So again, if they're able to see it, the regulation happen themselves, it's not as scary as the initial thought. Does that make sense?
Oh my goodness, Joe, you hit all the points. I knew you would. You talked about having that space in your classroom, that safe space that everybody knows, I need a moment. I'm going to go and I'm going to flop on the whatever beanbag or whatever space, or I'm going to look at the plants or whatever space, because I think it's up to the class to create that space and have input on what that space might look like, because the space may change every year. Really important classroom environment, the safety, the lights, everything that you've talked about. So kids know, again, they have the space to express themselves, even if they don't know how to express themselves appropriately. So I would do the same thing. So there's a child that needs a moment, may need a bit of your time, that you got it with the awareness with the rest of the class saying, and you're not trying to say, okay, you're not being militant saying, everybody at your desk and take out your whatever and work on and read or something. You're inviting them into this child's experience, depending on what the child needs. The child may need silence. The child may need support from his peers in a very kind, gentle way. Like I had a child who they would be dysregulated. I'd have the rest of the class hum as they went off into their place. So he felt included, right? So, okay, I got it. So the rest of the kids are also experiencing and participating in these moments to regulate, to have the awareness about what regulation is, and to feel that they can help someone else who's having a tough time. So then if they know that if that's going to be them in 10 minutes or 10 days, they will also have that support. So you alluded to all these things very beautifully with all the strategies that you talked about. So the strategies, the cues for the child that's struggling, lonely, unhappy, and for the others to again express their humanity and also be learning at the same time. So there are wonderful things that teachers can do in the classroom to support social emotional learning, and to get kids to be aware, practice, integrate, and then express all these wonderful things that are some of the most beautiful things that make us human. So thank you. You don't think you're hitting these buttons, but you are. And I knew, again, I'm saying this again, I knew you would, because that's the kind of teacher that you are. So we focused a lot on the student, and we focused a lot about the teacher and the classroom. I think it's important to, again, as I continue to talk about partnership between parents and teachers for the best to support the child's learning and so the child can be the best version of themselves. How do we work with parents and have conversations with parents? And what is if you could share as an example of how a discussion with the parents really helped pick up a notch, so to speak, what you were able to do for a child or your classroom in the past? Because the key is here to work with the parents to understand. I know for me, what I've had conversations with my daughter's teachers around, hey, this is what I do at home. So can we line up so there's consistency? And please tell me what you're doing so that I can also practice at home. So you have this double whammy kind of thing. Do you have any examples of that and any conversations and the kinds of questions or fears that parents have about, leaving their kids in a classroom so they too feel safe and okay?
Yeah, this is like when your book came out and you were talking about doing a book, and I seen the title of it. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the toughest and hardest thing to put together, but also the most important, especially in the early years. And my son now is in high school, and the emails right now with the teachers he has, are fantastic because we're we're on the same page. We're working together with his transition in and whatnot. So it's all different at different levels, obviously. But yeah, I think I'll go back to my time in kindergarten, which was super busy, and I absolutely loved it. We were the first taste. My partner, my ECE partner, and I, we were the first taste of an adult actually looking after. I'm talking to parents, your child for the first time ever outside of your family. So one, it's we need to come off and develop a very common grounds that we are safe, we are human, we are going to make mistakes, but at the end of the day, we need to work together. Sometimes the stuff in the classroom isn't working and we're going to have it wrong. We identify and understand that, hence why we try to contact and stay in touch with you so that we can find, like Leah was mentioning, at home this works, maybe we'll try it at school, and if it works, great, this helps, especially for some of the self-regulation pieces. And again, tie back to the social-emotional learning. Sometimes, I don't want to use the word baggage, but sometimes the stuff that kids come into school with and are struggling with, they're not aware that other kids are annoyed or frustrated with how they're venting. So for us to help regulate some of that, eliminates some of those little nuances that other kids may find frustrating to be around, or we're able to explain why Susie or Jimmy are behaving the way they are today, where other kids are like, oh, this makes sense because I remember when I was with Grandpa and blah 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 blah. I felt the same. So opening lines of communication, and again, at the end of the day, I think the biggest piece is we're here to make it a safe place and an inclusive place that your kids love coming to. We don't want it to be a place where I don't want to go there. We want them to be happy coming. We want them to feel safe. We want them to feel inclusive. I always like standing at the door when I was in kindergarten, meeting the parents, asking the parents how their weekend went and the kids. Sometimes it was a high five or a knuckles or, making fun of their team or, their sports teams. I almost said hockey again, but we do have American people too, right? For football. Yeah, it's making sure that parents know we are human too. And at the end of the day, how do I put that one? I almost want to feel like an extension of the family, I guess. Whether that's, cool Uncle Joe, the teacher, or whatever, or something along those lines. Because if the kids feel that way, then it's a little more safe, not only for the kids, but also parents going, oh, this works. This is a safe person. I'm trying not to be me, but a safe teacher, a safe adult that I feel comfortable letting my kids go to and happy at the same time.
Yeah, so important. We're back to those safe spots and being being who you are, Joe. Kind, open to communication, compassion, open to learning. Because when you were talking, I was thinking about a young student that I had. Their name was, I'm sorry, I'm just going to call them A. And they were very disruptive. I'd be teaching a lesson and blurting out, seeking attention, and as like you said, we're human, right? So that's frustrating, all that stuff. So I think what I'm trying to get at is there was learning for me. That child was teaching me something about patience, about kindness, and the skill of being a teacher came in. Okay, what are the strategies I'm going to use to help this child regulate and not blurt out? And we came up with something that if I was speaking and his hand went up or their hand went up, I would do this. So I'd count to 5 without stopping what I was saying. So he was cued, or they were cued, knowing that you got 5 seconds to think about it, and I'll get back to you. Seen, heard, respected, validated. But this is going on right now. So let's teach you to wait. And so the other kids saw that as well. But it's like, oh, I just want to get this lesson going, right?
Yeah.
And it's okay. What, you sit with it. It's like, okay, patience, kindness, compassion. And what is this child teaching me? What is this child going through? And then you have the discussion with parents. This is what I'm doing in the classroom. Can you practice this at home? And by the end of the year, that kid knew. That kid knew, just from simple little things like this. So these simple little practices or behaviors that can be put into practice to help kids. You model them in the classroom. They're concretized again and repeated at home. And slowly behaviors will change. I believe that. I mean, it's not easy, but it's important to remember, parents, the teachers are humans too. Teachers are learning. Your kid may not like the teacher. That kid may also be challenging the teacher, right? So constantly talking about that reciprocity and what's going on in these classrooms. And that's why partnership is important. You do that beautifully because of your kind, open heart and your spirit. I want to thank you for sharing your journey, your experiences today. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to meet with us and to talk to parents about what you do in the classroom with respect to the experiences and the way you interact with the kids to create those safe spaces to support social-emotional learning and to be a leader and to help others in your board do the same thing. I know that you're a great dad. I was shocked when you said Xander was in high school. I said Xander 8. Where does the time go? I don't know. But it continues to be a pleasure and an honor to collaborate, and connect with you. So thank you, Mr. Archer, for helping us out today. I'm sure we'll be in touch soon. And we're going to wrap up this episode of Teacher Talk with a big, huge love for you, your students, and your family. Thank you.
Thank you.